2021 meeting of the Planning Commission Working Group to order. Ms. Cook, will you please call the roll?
Yes. Mr. O'Connor? Ms. Leverns?
Here.
Ms. Leverns is an at-large member. Mr. Polster?
Here.
Mr. Polster represents the Jamestown District. Dr. Rose? Ms. Null?
Present.
Ms. Null represents the Stonehouse District. Mr. Kropp?
Here.
Chair of the Planning Commission. Ms. Wortman?
Here.
Ms. Wortman represents the Community Participation Team. Thank you, and we have a quorum.
Thank you all. Just as a reminder, if you please try to remember to use the raise your hand icon, I'll try to remember to recognize you. As you know, on April 13th, 2021, the board readopted the Continuity of Government Ordinance, which under certain circumstances permits this committee to conduct today's meeting by electronic or telephonic means without a quorum of members physically present. You each have a copy of that resolution in your packet. May I please have a motion for the adoption of that resolution for a roll call? Ms. Cook? Do we need a roll call?
We've sort of gone back and forth. I know for the Planning Commission meetings, because it's just the commission, we've always insisted on a roll call vote, but I know on the working group, we've gone back and forth over the last year or so.
Well, let's just, all in favor then, we'll just do it by acclamation.
Okay.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all. Although these meetings have not had a dedicated public comment period, we did allow public comment to be collected through several means. Staff, were there any public comments received?
No comments were received.
Thank you. Thank you, Rich. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Comprehensive plan update materials, Ms. Cook.
Yes, thank you. The main purpose of the work session today is to review the outcomes of the joint meeting with the board last week. In reviewing these outcomes, the working group members may wish to provide thoughts or considerations which could be conveyed to the board or Planning Commission going forward. Staff is hoping we can go through the list of items and do a pause for questions or thoughts after each one. And the resulting changes to the transportation chapter and future land use map are listed in the memo. Did the working group have any questions or comments on this item? Hearing none. The second item discussed were the rural lands policies. The board voted to move forward with the materials as currently drafted, so that would be no changes to the text as compared to what you all have seen previously. Were there any questions or comments on this item? All right, the third item was the economic opportunity land use designation. The board indicated support for moving forward with materials as drafted. So again, no changes as compared to what you'd seen. Were there any questions or comments on this item? All right, thank you. The next items were future land use map considerations. The first one was that the land use application 20-0020, the parcels adjacent to colonial heritage. The board voted to affirm the working group recommendation. So that was to go to mixed use. And so again, were there any questions on that item? Great, thank you. The next item was an item that the board brought up the discussion of, which was the Crooker interchange area. The direction was to adjust the primary service area and redesignate parcels on the east side of I-64 to rural lands, with two of the parcels being community character, community character, open space, and recreation. So the two parcels that the working group had previously voted on would be those designations. There were changes to the materials as a result of that action, and staff has provided revised language for the mixed use. So did the working group members have any questions about that item or the changes to the text? All right, thank you. The next item was a discussion of LU-20-0017. These were the parcels across from Windsor Mead Marketplace. The board voted to redesignate these parcels to low-density residential, and there would not be any changes needed to the land use designation descriptions document. It would just be LDR. Any questions about that one? Okay. The next items were goal, strategy, and action items. So the board talked about Ford, which had language about supporting the Commonwealth of Virginia's commitment to achieving 100% carbon-free power. So staff has accordingly removed that GSA from the public facilities GSAs and renumbered the subsequent GSAs accordingly. The next item was an item that the board supported retaining. This was Environment GSA 1.7, which has language about developing watershed management plans and was revised during this process to include language about ecosystem services and climate change related precipitation impact. And as they supported retaining it is still in the GSA set for the environment chapter. And finally, the board asked for more information about two GSAs, Environment 3.7.1, and then a different one, which was 4.6.1 and its sub-actions. So those GSAs are retained in the chapter. Staff has been working to prepare information for the board on the working group's discussion of these items during the update process, including excerpts from staff received an email suggesting that the information provided include information about land use GSA 1.6. Both Environment GSA 4.6 and Land Use GSA 1.6 discuss the possible creation of performance standards or requirements for alternative energy uses. In addition to natural resource considerations, the Land Use GSA also includes preservation of rural character and mitigating impacts to neighboring properties as considerations. Are there any questions about the does the working group have any objections to including 1.6 among those materials? If not, we will do so.
I'm sorry, Ellen, I had my hand raised. Will the Planning Commission Working Group see what you're going to forward to the board on 371 and 46 and 16?
Yes, we can forward that material to you. Yep.
Thank you.
Certainly. Okay. The next item we're hoping to receive working group guidance on is an item that was not in the memo. It was instead in an email a day or two ago. As we've been working on developing the future land use map, we has led staff to re-examine the Newtown community character area and identify that it may be appropriate to adjust the Newtown CCA in two respects. First, to encompass the area added to the Newtown mixed use designation via land use application LU 20-0002. And second, to no longer encompass land that had been redesignated to federal, state, or county land via land use application LU 20-0009, as well as other industrial designated land along Tuning Road. If the working group provides guidance to proceed with this adjustment, an updated version of the map showing that revision would be prepared. And are there any questions about that or any feedback?
Ellen, I had one comment, and that was the strip that's to the west of 199 that we designated as open space recreation. And so I would assume that that wouldn't be covered underneath the CCA. Am I correct about that?
So the land that is west of 199, I'm sorry, can you repeat that one more time where you're
Yes,
thinking
it's
of?
the land west of 199 that's on the Ford Colony side that has the RPA that's almost 90% through there. And we designated it as open space rec.
Okay. We can go back and look at that. We'll kind of look around the whole edge of it, and in particular, we'll look at that aspect and see if any adjustments are needed there.
Okay.
Thank
you.
Staff would like to turn it over to the working group for any final items, such as potential adjustments to the GSA regarding setbacks on rural roads per recent emails, or any other matters.
Rich?
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Jack. I thought it was a very good discussion that Tim introduced about a greater level of specificity and to protect our scenery. And I've been watching with interest. Jack brought up some good points about some of the other roadways that, while they're not the agricultural and open space designation, they still have some merit in preserving as well. And so I was interested in Ellen's most recent email where she said, well, what we could do is just say on any scenic community character corridor, we wanted to look at stipulating a significant setback to preserve, whether it be the buffering or the rural vistas. And so I just wanted to throw that out to the group and get some feedback. I do agree with Tim's initial premise that we need to have some, maybe a greater level of specificity in some of those action items.
Thank you very much. I agree as well. Any other thoughts on that? Mr. Polster?
Yeah, I may be wrong about this, and I'd like staff to take a look at it. But I remember very distinctly on the Forge Road, there was a limitation on being able to expand that roadway. Am I incorrect about that, Ellen?
I'm trying to think what factors might be there. There are some easements along the road on some of the properties that if VDOT or the county were to go in there, there might be some complications there because of conservation easements. There might also be some, topographic or other factors that would make it expensive. To my knowledge, I can't recall anything that would absolutely prohibit widening that road. Certainly, the comp plan gives guidance that,
that's part of the description that you may want to consider in some of these other scenic routes, because what we don't want is those roads improved where you're going to add more traffic to them or more entrances or any of the rest of it. So that was my 2 cents to it. And I agree about the language that we're talking about with the buffering. And I think that becomes even more important when we start talking, if we do come up with a solar farm ordinance, is the buffering requirements associated with that, so that if in fact it happens, you don't have to see the thing.
Point. And, I threw 400 feet out as a starting point, because that's what a couple of the properties with conservation easement adjustments on Forge Road involved was a stipulation that 400 feet be the limit. But that was just a sort of a straw man, if you will. If the discussion said, well, 500 feet is more realistic or what have you. I just wanted to say that I wasn't hard over. I certainly wouldn't want anything less than 400, but if during the discussion as this action item moves forward, I just wanted to say from my preference that 400 was just a starting point.
Mr. Polster?
The thing that caught me, Rich, was when I looked at the DEQ piece for buffering for solar farms, one of the things that they were emphasizing was natural plantings and berm kind of areas, so that where we may have narrow areas, it's the planting piece. And so I always like the way we describe the Richmond Road corridor with the 50-foot and the different plantings, and you get a sketch of that. And that's why I thought that for the rural area of the county, what the DEQ was suggesting for buffering for widths and lengths and things like that and plantings was probably more appropriate to the rural areas, especially on Ford's Road.
Okay, thanks, Frank.
Does any, Ms. Knoll?
Yes, I was just going to say, on the left side is a housing project going in there, and it sits back off the road, but as you approach it on both sides, all you see is woods, and then all of a sudden you see this whole area that's been torn up. And I'm just wondering, you know, if they're going to be putting a berm in there or replacing trees and so forth. You know, because you don't want all these entrances off the streets, and you don't want to ruin the view shed, and yet here is a development going in there. So I guess that was done before I got on the commission, but I would hope that something's in place to protect that area. And also, when I go over to the shooting range in Middlesex County, on Route 17, there is a huge solar farm with no buffer, no nothing, and all you see are acres and acres and acres of black glass. And it's really an eyesore. Just my opinion.
Yeah, I haven't been there in a while. The one I live just off Route 5, and there has been just gradual building of single-family homes.
Yes.
On the north side of the road, and there's about a 55-acre plot that's for sale. Parcel that's for sale, has been for sale for a long time, on the south side that you know, I guess could go into housing, but it is an important community character corridor. I think rural community character corridors have 100-foot buffers, I think. Now it's 50 feet, I guess it's 50 feet, but I wouldn't mind seeing that expanded either. But
Yeah.
Mr. Polster?
To Barbara's point, from the staff, when you bring this LU-16 up, you may want to include in there what the DEQ is proposing for buffering and what they're looking at to get at exactly that point that Barbara's making, because I know that Ms. Sadler had that view of just being able to just see black glass as opposed to something that was buffered and hidden away.
Barbara, is your hand still up, or is?
No, I have to take it down. Sorry.
Okay, it's okay. Anyone else? Ellen, do you have the kind of guidance you need?
The last suggestion that had been thrown out there was consider 400-foot setbacks along community character quarters outside the primary service area. Is that comfortable to the working group?
It is for me. Do you want to also, to Frank's point, have something about the DEQ's buffering for solar farms, or?
I'd glad to hear additional feedback. I think there are a couple of GSAs that would speak to that already.
Okay.
When we have those alternative energy GSAs and talking about developing some performance standards, including mitigating impacts on adjacent properties, anticipate being able to look at some of those issues as part of that GSA currently.
My issue is not so much with the 400-foot, but that the 400-foot should have some plantings in it so that the view shed itself in a natural way can be there in those rural lands. Because you could have 400-foot and have nothing.
Yes, and there are some, I think, complementary GSAs in that grouping that Mr. Haldeman had emailed out.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, yeah.
And if I could just add, I know to Frank's point, the two farms on Ford's Road that has 400-foot built in to the amended conservation easements, they are planning to do agricultural activities in that 400 feet. So, you know, I think what Frank's looking for is some sort of a plan to address that, whether it's with buffering or through agricultural uses. But there's a lot of pastures that are planted on the road and harvested for hay and such.
Exactly, Rich, exactly.
Julia?
Yes, I wanted to support what both Jack and Rich had to say. I don't think berms would accomplish what we're looking for, certainly not in the rural areas. So that have plantings or, as Rich said, agricultural uses. There again, if there's a solar farm and they're farming the agricultural land between the road and the solar farm, that's not going to accomplish the purpose we're looking for. Thanks.
Correct.
Okay,
Thank you.
we're all set here. Ellen, that's it for your memo, I believe, is it not?
It is, yes.
Are there any other items for discussion? Could we be already arriving at a motion for adjournment?
June 7th, and that may have just been a placeholder, but I just wanted to confirm that this is our final meeting.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Mr. Kopp. Apologies to the working group. Yes, if the discussion is able to be wrapped up today, then we will cancel the meeting on the 7th, and this would be the final one. And would hope to look to the group for a final vote on the plan as a whole before adjourning today.
Okay. Is everybody prepared to make that vote?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
I'd just like to say that, the plan as it's written, there are a few things that I would like to have changed. I don't think I've been shy in expressing my opinion. I think that probably goes with everybody. I would think we all have a couple of things that we wish could have been put in, and not just the thought that went into it, but how they were expressed, the level of respect and civility, even when there were disagreements. This was just a marvelous enterprise, I think, and I just staff, the consultants, and the other 7 of you. It's been a real honor, and I just wanted to thank you all. Frank?
Here, here. Thank you, Jack.
Thank you all. Thank everybody.
Jack, I don't have a problem with the comprehensive plan document. I still have big reservations about the land use map and what gets approved. And so I have no problem in supporting the comprehensive plan documents minus the land use map.
All right, well, let's take it one step at a time. May I please have a motion to approve the comprehensive plan as written?
So moved.
Julie, so move.
Thank you. We should do a roll call vote on this, I think. Ms. Cook, please.
Yes. Just checking if. Okay. All right. Ms. Leverins?
Aye.
Mr. Polster?
Aye.
Dr. Rose? Ms. Knoll?
Aye.
Mr. Kropp?
Aye.
Mr. Haldeman?
Aye.
Ms. Wortman?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you all. May I please have a motion to approve the new land use map?
So moved. This is Rich.
Discussion?
Sorry, I didn't raise my hand. Can I talk anyway?
You can talk anyway, Jenny. You've earned that.
I can't move my computer fast enough. I'm curious as to what would put Frank over the line in terms of approving the land use map. And that would be useful to know before we vote on whether to approve it now.
Sure. I've written several papers to this, and as a matter of fact, I have one written when we get to the public hearing. And it's very simple. We won't see yet the final we still have not seen table LU table 1. And LU table 1 is essentially going to say what the by right development is for the 2045 timeframe. And as I've written already, what we have approved by right within the PSA is almost 85% of that 120,000. And as both Jack and I have both said, is 94% that took the survey said there's enough. And so I am just boggled by the notion that we would approve Eastern State to add that population, that traffic, and on top of it, take a $5 million negative financial impact to the county. And that's in their expense piece that they put in there. So I don't understand what we gain by adding more development when the citizens of this county don't want it. And so I've said all along is wait. Let the market values go. And if the market starts to take up all that 85% on then in the next comp plan, okay. But there is no reason in my mind to go ahead and continue to take all the unintended effects of population growth. And all we're doing is adding more to it. And we've not mitigated any of it. So anyhow, that's where I am, Jenny.
Okay, so if I'm understanding you correctly, without additional action by the working group or the planning commission, you would not approve the future land use map, period.
Right.
Okay. Now I understand. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Any other discussion? There's a motion on the floor. Ms. Cook, would you please, the motion is to approve the future land use map as drawn. I guess that would include the redrawing of the CCA for Eastern State and Newtown. Ms. Cook, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Leverins,
Aye.
Mr. Polster,
No.
Ms. Knoll,
No.
Mr. Kropp,
Aye.
Mr. Haldeman,
No.
Ms. Wortman.
No.
I believe the motion does not carry.
The motion does not carry. Do we need, does that go to a hearing now, Ellen? Is that our next step or? Rich, I see your hand. I'll be with you in a minute.
Sure.
Wait a little bit, but.
Yes, yeah. I'm sorry, I need to think about that for a minute.
Sure. Rich?
Well, I just, my concern is that there are so many changes or so many elements in the future land use map that have already been through the process of land use applications and so on and so forth. And it seems to a very good point that if we have enough potential inside the PSA, why add this extra potential? But I sort of go back to the stance that this is non-regulatory. This is just saying that should the need arise, we've designated these parcels near Newtown and Eastern State that can be used for development. And of course, any residential rezoning or development has to go through the legislative process anyway. And just because it's in the comp plan doesn't mean it'll be approved. And so that's sort of where I'm landing on it. And I didn't mention that a minute ago because I was over a line in the sand about is there enough development potential already within the PSA? And when, as I said, there's the escape mechanism that says this is not an ordinance by any means. This is just a recommendation for future growth. So that should the need arise. So anyway, that's where I stand on that.
Thank you. Julia?
Yeah, and just to build on that, I voted aye for much the same reason as Rich just explained. But it's not so much a recommendation for future growth, but if growth is going to happen, but the growth could happen in this area versus another area. And one of the things that I've noticed over the years with the comprehensive plans is that development that could happen doesn't happen. So there are lots of properties out there that could have been developed over the last 30 or 40 years that have not been developed. And who knows, they may never be developed, but something else might be developed instead that would make more sense. And so I'm kind of looking at that same way Rich does, is that, we're looking at a possibility, not a certainty here with this land use map. Thanks.
Thank you. Frank?
I think 2 points. One of the things I was really excited about with this comp plan was the modeling. And the reason I was excited, able to actually define it, and to a large extent, we've done well on the traffic, sort of okay on the financial, and not at all with the environment, outside of the fact that more cars are going to be more CO2 for it. But the thing that started me off on this was two things that Rich actually taught me from the very beginning of when I got to the board here, was that when you get a legislative case, the first thing you're going to look at is, what does the comp plan say? And so invariably, if the comp plan said, like in the Oakland Point, that's where we wanted to put development, despite all the not in my backyard and all the rest of it, the owner of that property and what the county had approved at some point was valid. And I had no right to say, oh, no, that isn't valid, that you can't have development there, because it was in the comp plan. But the second thing is, when I look at a legislative case, all I get to do is look at the impacts of that particular case itself. And all I can use is the TIA without any regard to the cumulative impact that has. But as you're taking a look at that legislative case, the only thing you can really look at are what that impact is of that property, which is why I like the idea of being able in this comp plan to look at the cumulative impacts of what that 40,000 would bring to the county. And at the end of the day, I understand it's a legislative process, but I'm also guided by this comp plan and that land use map in making a decision. And so in several of these cases with the land use, because of the cumulative impact, no, we have enough. And maybe it's some other time, okay? Like with the EO on Hillcrest Farm, when that goes away, okay. But we don't need to make that decision now. And so that's part of the rationale in terms of you're actually making a decision now when you come to those legislative cases, because you've made some judgments right now in this comp plan about the land use. So that's the last of what I've got to say. Thank you.
Jenny?
Thank you. I have to admit, well, you heard me hesitate before I voted. And I went back and forth because I kept thinking about your point, Jack, about scenario C. Not the 120,000 or whatever the number was, but having what we might hope to be a more realistic projection of what the population might be. And I'm a little, even though I voted no, now I'm a little concerned about what the practical implication of that is if there is no approved future land use map. How does the Planning Commission operate when cases come up?
I think we're going to hear something from Ellen, but all we are is a recommendation body. And whether we recommend it or not, to what stand, it still goes forward. I was never my intent to stop the process from going forward. And so as a recommendation, the decision of this whole thing lasts with the board, not with us. And there's nothing that tells me that's going to stop that process from continuing on, to include the public hearings, which we've announced already.
Is that, I think that is, I mean, the process is accurate as described by Mr. Polster. Where staff seeks a recommendation from this group, it then goes to the Planning Commission for their recommendation and would ultimately go to the board for a final decision. The future land use map, just to kind of reiterate what that consists of, it's the map that reflects the decisions that have been made on the land use application. So while certainly the decisions on the land use applications were not all unanimous, they were voted on, and that's what would get reflected in the land use map. But moving forward, we can record that vote as your recommendation for the land use map.
Mr. Holt.
Good afternoon, everybody. So yeah, as always, you know, Ellen hit the nail right on the head, and sort of sitting here from a staff perspective, you know, I don't know that this vote, to answer Ms. Wortman's concerns, this vote certainly won't mean that there won't be a future land use map component to the comp plan. You know, again, I think Ellen accurately stated, really the draft future land use map that's in front of you really represents sort of the land use map that we started out with, which is the currently adopted 2035 land use map, with the changes, the sort of the culmination, the collection of individual land use changes that were taken place by the individual votes on each of the land use applications by the PC working group. Those are just really sort of rolled up into the current plan. You know, again, far be it for me, I wouldn't presume to want to sort of restate the intent of the vote. You know, I think we'll have to work with as staff, we'll have to work with the Planning Commission working group to be able to articulate and be very clear as this thing proceeds up to the full Planning Commission on the 24th and to the board on July 13th. You know, if at the end of the day the vote resulted the way it did today, because, you know, gosh, heading into this comp plan update process, you know, 18 months ago, there was an agreed to methodology, and we got lots of good data along the way, but gosh, sort of, you know, here we are at the end of the process, and we sort of had this planning methodology where we were going to, again, not pre-approve all of this for 120,000 population, but really just sort of set the future regulatory basis in a policy document, recognizing that every rezoning has to come through and every rezoning stands or falls on its own. So this really isn't a predictive type of thing, but you know, at the end of all of this, if today's vote was really just, gosh, you know, we looked back at all of this and, you know, think that the population ought to be something less. You know, big picture, that represents an entirely different methodology that we could certainly investigate later. And, you know, I didn't get a sense from today's vote that today's vote was because there was one specific change. It's just generally looked at it and said, well, we shouldn't plan for this much growth to come to the county, and it feels like too much. Then, you know, I think that's a fair enough message if that's, you know, the message that the PC working group, by virtue of this vote, wants to send on to the PC. And if the PC wants to send a similar sort of set in notes up to the board as sort of their thoughts on the future land use map. I certainly think we're at a point here at the end of the process where coming up with a different methodology or coming up with a scenario C methodology and trying to work to a different population control total, that's a pretty significant. We're certainly not going to be able to get that done or incorporate those changes into this comp plan. But, that's certainly a fair enough set of comments that, again, as we move forward, we'll want to make sure we're capturing that as we deliver some of these comments up to the PC and board. So.
Thank you. Tim, welcome.
Hi, good afternoon. I don't have anything to add to the conversation. I just wanted to apologize. I believe Dr. Rose jinxed me since I was driving down from Northern Virginia today. So I'm here and I'm late and I apologize, but thanks for your patience.
Were you here in time for the vote on the land use plan, land use map, Tim?
I was not. I got on just before Paul's comments.
Just to fill you in, we unanimously approved the comprehensive plan as written. We recommended not to approve the future land use map by a vote of 4-2, I think, with you absent and with Dr. Rose absent. I don't know whether I'm allowed to do this, but if you'd like to vote, feel free.
Can I interject, Jack?
Sure.
Not to interrupt, but 4-2, the numbers don't match. We're missing Paul. The future land use map, does it contain any other information other than the all the county parcels and what they could potentially be rezoned to? I mean, there's nothing in there about traffic corridors or anything else. Am I missing that?
Well, as with most things, I'm gonna need Ellen to help me out with this. The transportation corridor descriptions are all in the transportation chapter.
Right. Because here's where I'm going with that question. We have already voted as a working group on every land use application that was different than the previous comp plan's map. And so my way of thinking is what we're saying is that because even though, let's use Eastern State, even though Eastern State parcel was voted approval to bring it in, because there's some members of the working group who don't agree with that vote, they're saying we're not going to approve the future land use map. And I guess where I'm coming from on all of this is, at what point do you is this sort of a moot point that the future land use map, the way it's presented now, reflects the votes that were made over the last 6 months or so, and that we don't have the latitude to say, oh no, I don't approve this future land use map. That's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I had two major issues with the land use map. Eastern State is one, and Anderson's Corner was the other. And I lost both votes. And so when there was a vote and they're significant, they were not, there were some smaller issues and some larger issues, but these were two biggies for me. And that's why I couldn't support the land use map as a whole. Even though there are parts to it that I like.
But see, where I'm coming from, Jack, is
I understand your point. Yeah, we've
already voted.
Yeah, we've approved it in steps, mm-hmm. and then disapproved it in aggregate. And
exactly.
Is that
valid? I don't think it is.
Okay. Ellen, can we just take this to the Planning Commission and just as a discussion that we recommend these individual parcels without a recommendation on the land use map as a whole? I don't know where the Robert's Rules of Orders go on this, frankly.
Jack, can I ask Paul to clarify something for us?
Sure,
or Ellen?
of course.
So I guess for me, to me, I think that to Rich's point, the land use map follows the land use applications. And so my question is, from a hierarchy of guiding documents for the Planning Commission and for the staff, is it the comp plan or the land use map? And the reason why I'm asking this is, you know, I live my life dealing with inconsistent documents, and I think it's extremely unfair to any subsequent planning commissions or the planning staff or the board of supervisors that we create tools that become guiding documents that are inconsistent. And I think even to those landowners and applicants, if we're not consistent, then we're not doing our job. It's just, in simple terms, is how I see it. So I'd like to just ask the planning team what their thoughts are as far as guiding documents go.
I'll answer it a different way. I mean, at the end of the day, the comp plan is the comp plan, and the comp plan has various component parts that we've talked about, right? Chapters, the map, you know, the supporting information that went into it. There's just a lot, but it all bubbles up to the one comprehensive plan. The county has one comprehensive plan, and you know, I would, you know, with a little bit of liberty, sort of characterize some of the straw votes today at really getting at, are there any last minute changes on these component parts that the PC working group wants to see before the whole thing moves forward? And, you know, from, you know, obviously the vote today, you know, I think sort of what staff needs is to know, are there any sort of, you know, after 3 chapter reviews, after a couple reviews of the GSAs, after 3 joint work sessions, 3 more joint work sessions with the Board of Supervisors, sort of after all the work of the CPT, you know, are there, sort of recognizing that on those first 2 rounds are all the big substantive changes got made. You know, today was really about, you know, are there within the realm of what staff can do between now and the 24th, you know, be great to, with as much work and as much commitment as this group has put into creating the one comprehensive plan, inclusive of all of the component parts that went into it, the land use descriptions, the text descriptions of the mixed use area, the text descriptions of the EO, it all goes in there. And when we, you know, like I say, bubble this, realizing that it's sort of a summary of its component parts, and really just kind of helps, I think, again, staff to really kind of hone in on any last minute thing. You know, the last couple of emails sort of finalizing some of the GSAs. Those are the levels of types of things. I mean, you know, if at the end of the day, the PC working group doesn't want to reconsider a part of a fixable part of the future land use map at this point, then again, I think that's okay. And I think the vote reflected that there's just more of a general sense that sort of the sum of all of its component parts, you know, is just something we'd like to revisit as a whole. Again, I think that's a fine statement. It's just not something we can kind of go back and make those big of a revisions at this point. So, you know, again, I think the one comprehensive plan will move forward on to the PC on the 24th. And, As always, we're going to do our best to capture the discussion in the minutes and the votes, and do our best to keep the board informed when we get to them in July. So I hope that answers your question. It's a little bit of a rambling thing, as I'm prone to do.
Thanks.
Jenny, back to you.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate what folks have been saying about going back on the individual decisions that we made, or because some of us voted against certain ones, that making the whole plan, or that making the whole map not acceptable. And I mean, Eastern State was a problem for me as well. And I find myself dithering is the best word I can use to describe, which I find also embarrassing. But if this does go back to the Planning Commission, I guess you should count me as hesitant. I don't know. Sorry.
No.
I mean, one of the things I keep thinking about is what I said at the Board of Supervisors meeting, which was on virtually every parcel that we talked about as possible mixed use. It was traffic. It was, is this where we want all these people? And there was just this constant tension with, if we're trying to keep all of the growth inside the PSA, we just don't have all that many options. And it always ended up moderate density, mixed use were the places where we had the most difficulty in coming to agreement, I think. Mm-hmm. It's just a tension that's hard to balance. So I'll stop. I'm not adding to the discussion, so I'll stop.
No, you were helpful. Thank you. Mr. Weissong, a fresh voice here.
How fresh I'll be. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Excellent. Yeah, I had a chance to look back at the memo we had prepared, gosh, I think 1 or 2 meetings ago, that had summarized the changes to the land use map. And I did want to just, as a reminder, point out that there are a few items that are separate from the land use applications. One of them would be the mapping of the military influence overlay district, which was one of the GSAs that had been included as part of the land use section that I think you all had been pretty supportive of. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure how this would work, but I think the Moortown Road extended is currently shown on the future land use map. So I'm not sure how that would play out, but those are the 2 bigger items, I think, in that memo that are on the land use map, separate from the applications. There's some other notes and revisions and things like that, but just wanted to throw that out there for context.
Thank you very much. Tim?
I'll let Rich had his hand up.
I did, but you go ahead, Tim.
Oh, so sorry. Thanks. I guess just, on Monday morning quarterbacking this thing, and by my tardiness today, I guess, I guess I'd offer a couple of things. One, I'm disappointed that we would approve these land use applications in the form and fashion that we did, whether we agree or we don't. I mean, I think that's probably one of the things that we do well in terms of being collegial, even when disagreeable. But I think to change, in my opinion, change direction at this point is a little disconcerting and disappointing to me. I guess I would offer that, much like the Moortown Road extension discussion we just had, some of these things are placeholders and don't mean that they will indeed come to fruition. And I would look at some of our, I would look at Ford's Colony and Kings Mill and Stonehouse, and these are all communities that are 20 to almost 50 years old and have never been built out and will never be built out to what their original master plan is. So, I think I would encourage everybody to create consistency between the land use applications that we had and the land use map. So we don't have discrepancies in those pieces, whether it's for the staff or the citizens. And, I would have, had I been here, would have voted to go, would have voted to stay with the land use map as it's been presented.
Thank you. Rich?
Yes. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but another way of looking at this in my mind is that the land use map is nothing more than a graphic depiction of our votes. And to say, and that's where I go back to my original premise, that it's really not up to the working group to vote this land use map up or down, because it is a reflection of the individual land use applications, plus a couple of the items that Thomas mentioned. And I would think that the Moortown Road extended would be taken off of the map when it goes to the Planning Commission, because the board directed that be the case. But I guess my point that I'm still getting hung up on is whether this was a legitimate vote. It's no different in a sense. The land use map is no different than any other graphic in the comp plan, and it reflected the 18 or 22 or however many different applications that were voted on individually. And nothing personal, but I don't think any of us have the option to say, you know what, I don't like how the vote went on land use application number 22, so I am going to not vote to approve the land use map. And I don't think we have that latitude. And that's all I'm going to say on it. But
thank you.
Yeah.
Vlad?
Yeah, good evening.
Good evening.
Sorry to add another factor, but I just wanted to add a point about the modeling, since it was brought up. And you probably already know this, but just for the record and the recording, the point was made that the modeling showed 120,000 population. And just as a reminder, the modeling is separate from the land use map, in a sense, that was an exercise done to compare different policy directions. And there's nothing embedded in that land use map that would mandate or encourage that population. The population will be dictated much more by market forces than by planning and zoning, of course. But that was a forecast from the regional HRTPO for the growth in 25 years that was just used as a benchmark. And both are embedded in the land use map. It was just something done as a variable in the modeling process. I hope that helps.
Thank you. Frank?
I wrote a paper early on in the process that was trying to provide some kind of an historical perspective. And it was a quote off of the chairman of the Board of Supervisors in 1985 about how growth wasn't going to go out of fashion. And that was when the county had a population of 43,000. And here we are at 73. So I appreciate Tim's comment about how things may not or whatever. But one of the interesting things that was in that summation that was done by Jack Edwards was that he complained about the Long Hill Road and the traffic that was on there, and in fact, the need to widen it. And so here we go almost 20, 30 years forward, and we're finally getting around to the widening of Long Hill Road. And so the point that I'm trying to make is that the decisions that you make today in 20 or 30 years are going to come back. And so one of the things that I was trying to get at is not that you shouldn't have growth, but maybe you ought to be able to mitigate it, or maybe you don't need it now. And so I am sorry for dragging everybody through this, but the fact of the matter is when we have the responsibility to look back and answer to the citizens and say, do you really want the type of growth that we're proposing in this land use map? And 94% say no. And I happen to be one of those people that have gone through the process, but at the end of the day, I'm not in agreement about that population growth now. And that's why I brought it up. It's more of a matter of principle. It was never my intent to stop this from going to the Planning Commission meeting, or did I have any idea that it would stop at the Planning Commission and not go to the board, because we are the proven authority. But as a matter of conscience, I wanted to bring this thing up now and not have anybody surprised when we get to the 24th. As I said, I wrote a paper about this already and sent it to you all. So none of this is a surprise to any of you, I hope. Thank you.
Rich?
Yes, one last question, I guess. Can I pull a page from Supervisor Ruth Larson's book from our last joint meeting? And after one of the votes that took place, she asked for a reconsideration of that vote. And I'm thinking we've had some more extensive discussion since our vote on the FLUM, and Tim has joined the conversation, which he wasn't there previously. So does Robert's rules allow us to take the vote again?
I don't know about Robert's rules, but Haldeman's rules do. So I don't see any harm in that.
Yeah, so the way you would do that is somebody on the prevailing side would make a motion to reconsider the item. And then you all as a PC working group would do a first vote on the motion to reconsider. And if that passes, then somebody could make a new motion, and at which point you could take another vote. That's the structure that the board used.
Okay. May I have a motion to reconsider from somebody who voted yes, or who voted not to approve the FLUM?
I'll make a motion to reconsider.
Thank you. Call the roll, please, Ms. Cook.
Mr. O'Connor?
And I'm sorry, this is on the reconsideration, right?
Yes.
Yeah, this isn't on a new motion. This is just whether or not to reconsider to allow for a new motion to be made.
I would vote in favor. Aye.
Ms. Leverins?
Aye.
Mr. Polster?
Aye.
Ms. Knoll?
Aye.
Mr. Kropp?
Aye.
Mr. Haldeman?
Aye.
Ms. Wortman?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay.
Motion
So
passed.
yeah, now a new motion could be made.
This is Rich. I'd like to make a motion to approve the future land use map in the draft document, I guess.
Okay.
Should that be with the overlay and the Moretown Road extension taken out?
Those elements would be included per your past votes, unless directed otherwise.
Okay.
Ms. Cook, would you please call the roll?
Mr. O'Connor?
Aye.
Ms. Leverins?
Aye.
Mr. Polster?
No.
Ms. Knoll?
Aye.
Mr. Kropp?
Aye.
Mr. Haldeman?
No.
Ms. Wortman?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Motion passes. Thank you. Just one last point, beating a dead horse. The description of this as the map is just kind of a general, it's not a legislative issue. It's not zoning. It's simply kind of a guide. But one of the things that put a chill through me was that land use 002 and 003 were submitted by owners. And I'm assuming that, of course, the state owns the property now, but that the owners are developers who were purchasing this property contingent upon it being redesignated in the comprehensive plan. And I take that to mean that they're ready to go. No, they've been building as fast as they could at Newtown, right up to the present borders of Newtown. And they're buying a substantial piece of property here contingent upon redesignation. And they're doing that because they see the demand and they're ready to go. And got the shovels out, and I think you're going to see building commence as soon as it's redesignated and rezoned. So this isn't just in my opinion, this isn't just some future model or something. This is the real deal. But at any rate, it's we're done here.
Mr. Haldeman, this is Paul. So I was just going to add, so really the way the traditional development process works is folks rarely, if ever, will buy a piece of land prior to a legislative process. And from everything I know from the state, the developers would be interested in buying this. And then certainly there will be many, many, many due diligence conditions associated with the sale, one of which will absolutely include, a future rezoning. Because if the future rezoning, regardless of what the comp plan says, comp plan just sort of says whether or not, sort of gives them direction about whether or not to pursue a rezoning. Like I say, very experienced developers. I would be surprised if they bought this property. It will most assuredly be contingent upon a future rezoning, and at even the next level might even be contingent upon the staff level approval of the construction plans. But they will definitely not purchase the land based solely on a comp plan update.
I guess that was my point. You said it much better, but the comp plan is going to give them encouragement to pursue a rezoning, which will give them encouragement to talk to staff but they are ready to begin the development of this. This isn't something for 2045 or 2040. They're ready to go is my guess. So anyway, doesn't matter. I just thought I'd throw that out.
Yeah, an iterative process nonetheless, as
sure.
you mentioned.
Ella?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to make sure before the end of the meeting to thank you all very much for your service. And we appreciate all your wonderful guidance and your careful reviews. Thank you.
Thank you. I speak for all of us in saying it's reciprocated. Staff has been great through all this. Great. Anything else for the good of the cause?
Jack, I just have one. And I apologize for again coming late to the party here today. But just for me in process in next steps, will we have, and I know we talked about this a little bit at a prior meeting, but just clarification for me. When we go into these land use applications for approval, do do we intend to do these as a block or as individuals? I shared with Mr. Haldeman and Mr. Holt just my concern that land use application 17 was discussed last week without the owners or any of their reps there to have a discussion or provide input. And I just want to make sure that that opportunity is made available to them at a future discussion.
Certainly a good point.
It will be as part of the public hearing process. It would not be my expectation that you all do separate votes on anything on the 24th. It's just the one vote on the one comprehensive plan.
All right. So are we going to be notifying that applicant or their rep about the recent developments
Yes.
and that there's an opportunity upcoming for them to make a presentation at a public hearing?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
thanks.
those letters just went out this week. Yep.
Thank you. It's a good point. Anything else? May I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Great. Thanks again, everybody.
Thank you.
Jack. Thanks.